All right, so good evening, Everest owners. Thank you for joining me. So for those watching on Facebook and in the Zoom chat, this is going to be an Ask the Owners session. We've got 3 experienced owners here who have owned and driven a multitude of four-wheel drives. All of them drive the Ford Everest at the moment, and all of them have got nothing better to do this evening than to sit here and answer any questions you can possibly manage to throw at them. So I do hope you manage to come up with some interesting ones. Now I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, and then we're going to launch into the first set of questions. So if you're on Zoom, use the Q&A function. If you're on Facebook, jump into Zoom if you can. It's easier to manage the questions there, but I will try and keep an eye on the comments. So Michael, if we could get you to introduce yourself, please. A bit of your background to four-wheel driving and a bit about your Everest history.
Well, I've been four-wheel driving for 30 years. It's probably the first half of that's been in the States, where I was wheeling primarily FJ40s. I had a couple of FJ40s, early ones with the 3 on the trees and drum brakes all around. I had a Suzuki Samurai over there, Jeep Cherokee. I started a couple of four-wheel drive clubs based around the FJ40s up in Washington State. I've done the Rubicon a few times in California. I've traveled much of Nevada, Idaho as well. And then I moved to Australia, and in Australia I got into Land Rovers. I went down that run. So I had a Disco 2 and had a Defender. Eventually moved into a Jeep Wrangler and a Jeep Commander, and then most recently into the Ford Everest. I drive a 3-liter Trend model, and mine's extremely modified. I also was the test vehicle for the front locker and the Rhino bar and a few other platforms for that vehicle.
Right, thank you very much. Jeff?
Jeffrey, I've been forward driving for about 20 years now, mainly around southeast Queensland. Started back with a little short base Holden Frontiera, which grew into a Grand Vitara, which then went backwards into a little Vitara that I used for a lot of competition work at the time. It was all twin locked and big wheels. Had a bit of a break, got into race cars, but then came back to an old Hilux that was in the family. That got me back into an Everest. I have an Everest Titanium, again, very heavily modified now. And it's a bit of pasture at the moment, but I have a Jeep JL at the moment, as well as my toy car.
Nice. And Tim?
Yeah, hi, I'm Tim. I have a Trend. That's actually my first proper full drive. Before that, I had an X-Trail and a Santa Fe, so they don't really count. I've only had it for 3 years now, so I'm more recent to the full driving scene than these guys. Mm-hmm. I initially bought mine just to tow a caravan, and then I just discovered that I enjoy full driving. So yeah, now mine's also quite heavily modified too.
Okay, good stuff. All right, so let's get in with the questions then. None of the attendees have asked a question yet, but I do have one for you guys. So starting with you, Michael, what are the top 3 things you most like about the Everest?
I think the first one was how set up it was right from the very beginning. So I like the fact that it not only came with the rear locker, but it also came with, when you use that front locker, the rear locker, when you use the rear locker, the front traction control stays active.
It's not particularly effective front traction control, is it?
No, sadly it's not, which is why I've upgraded to a front locker, which has made a world of difference. But the rear locker, which was something my Jeep, I didn't have a Jeep Rubicon, so I didn't have a rear locker until I installed one, and it just makes all the difference being able to get up those hills. The other reason I liked it, and one of the reasons I went away from the Jeep Wrangler, was because Jeep Wrangler was just too small. I've got 3 teenage boys, and I just couldn't get stuff into it for a weekend. So the Everest is much larger. I can bring a lot more with me. And lastly, one of the things I've experienced that I really enjoyed was the dealer experience. My Jeep dealer experience was terrible. Not so much the dealer, but more Jeep Australia, where my Ford Australia experience has been 180 degrees difference. So I've been very happy with that.
Okay, so the rear locker and the space there, that's hardly unique to the Everest. So what made you choose the Everest over a Cardo or an MUX or anything else?
Well, I was actually looking at the Prados, and I was looking at the Fortunas, which probably was where I was starting at because of the price point, because the Prados were a lot more money. But the Fortunas, I just found, I guess, I don't know if juvenile is the word, but they just felt like they were immature. They just didn't feel like an adult vehicle for a family, more of a teenager based on a pickup rig. So I didn't much care for that, but I like the Prado, but the Prado was just too expensive. And the Ford dealership was across the street, and they had an Everest there, and I looked at the Everest and started doing a little bit of homework. And the Everest had more stuff than I could get in a $10,000 more Prado with safety kit and radar cruise control, lane keeping, things of that nature.
Okay, it's good. Well, ironically, the Everest is actually based on a Ute, but it doesn't feel like it's based on a Ute because
exactly.
It's got an all-wheel drivetrain, it's got coil suspension, etc. Whereas, yeah, Toyota haven't quite done the same sort of thing with the Hilux and the Fortuner there. Okay, thank you. Jeff, what are your top three things about the Everest, and why did you buy one?
Why did we buy one? Initially, the seven-seaters, it was brought for the wife first, and then I took control of it when I realised what I could do with it. What I liked about it was that, yeah, it was something that I could drive to and from work, to and from school, but then on the weekend do some pretty serious stuff with it. And it would happily eat up the tracks and get me wherever I wanted to get to.
Okay. And so what made you go for the Everest over the Prado, the Fortuner, the MUX and everything else?
Again, the primary was the 7 seats. So the wife talked to a salesperson and they managed to convince her that she had to have 7 seats. We're only a family of 4, but apparently everyone, all the friends of the kids needed to be able to come along and get in the car. So we started looking at those and the sizes, and we just found the other cars just didn't have the room in the back when you started taking to those rear seats and using them from that side of things. I had no problem either getting the Prado, the Kakadu at the time, but from that side of things. I did like the Kakadu, except for the inside of it. It looked horrible with the fake wooden dash and all that kind of bits and pieces like that. So, which back to the Everest, it looked pretty good inside. It had all the gadgets and that sort of things from that side of things, and the 4-drive system. Locker on, traction control still works, and those bits and pieces from that side of things. It had I suppose a more modern system with the center diff tricks that it can do, but it has its weakness side of things as well.
All right, thank you. So what I'm hearing there from both of you guys is that Everest came across as a fairly modern vehicle, lots of safety. The interior was good, well designed. It didn't feel like a Ute, and it was good value. Tim, does that pretty much sum up your experience?
Yeah, definitely did. I mean, I also looked at all the other cars the boys were mentioning too, but back when I did mine, the Prado could only tow 2.5 tons, so I didn't consider that one at all. The Pajero Sport I didn't like the look of, and same problem with MUX and also the Colorado as well. Yeah, so I just like the way how it drives around town. It actually feels, not quite like a too big a 4-wheel drive compared to my mate in a big patrol and things like that. So it's nice to drive day to day, but then also, it tows my caravan really well and also lets me get out and hit the tracks as well.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Now I can tell you, as having road tested a lot of cars, I placed the Everest as the absolute best on-road handler in its class by a fair margin. It's better than Prado and Fortuner on road, no question about that. Okay, so the first question then from Steve Redman, if it's serviced per schedule and not doing lots of kilometres, should I be worried about it being out of warranty? Really happy with my Ambiente 4-wheel drive 3.2 2016. So yeah, I would say, look, these cars are pretty reliable. I mean, they're based on the range. We've got a lot of common range of parts. There haven't been any major issues there, and there's a lot of these vehicles running around. There's a lot of expertise, a lot of parts there. I wouldn't be worried about it being out of warranty at all. Michael, any extra to add to that?
The only thing I would add is people who are pushing it to the extreme. So the biggest issue we've had is probably temperatures with the transmission for people towing 3-ton. It does seem to struggle. It doesn't seem like the cooling is quite up to snuff. And so there are some good aftermarket ways of getting around that.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's the other thing. All these guys are from the Ford Everest Owners Club forum, and that's a really good group on Facebook. So if you are on Facebook and you are interested in Everest, jump on there. Do use the search function though.
Yes.
And one or two people have already asked what size tyres fit without a lift and what size tyres fit underneath that. So, but if you ask anything other than those questions, you'll find everyone very helpful indeed. So
I just want to add to that too. Is I mean, my car's done low Ks. It's only at 50,000 Ks, and it's gone over its 3 years. If you think you're only going to do the low Ks, get the extra 2 years warranty on it to go to 5 years.
I did that.
Oh, it's actually the Ford have now got a standard 5-year warranty as of 18 months ago or thereabouts, maybe 2 years.
Yeah. Because I mean, one reason I sort of retired my Everest from doing the hard stuff I was doing it was because I hit that 3-year warranty mark. So now it'll just sit back being the wife's car from that side of things.
Yeah. Okay, and the next part of the question from Steve is aluminium bar versus a smart bar. So a smart bar is basically a plastic bar. They're lightweight. They actually do repel wildlife. I've seen them in action, so they are effective there. So they're can be fairly expensive, so they're worth it for that. Some people think they don't look particularly great. You can fit winches to them. Really, I would definitely look at a smart bar for the reduced weight for sure. An aluminium bar, typically it needs a winch mount in there, so it can be a bit more expensive. So without really knowing what your requirements are, I probably can't say too much further.
I've got the rival aluminium bar. I've hit trees with it. I've knocked things over. I've done all kinds of stuff with it. So they're nice and strong. And I couldn't go the smart bar option because it didn't suit the titanium, the extra side sensors.
Okay. All right. Now let's talk about the Everest as an around town vehicle. So let's leave the off-road for the moment. I'm talking about the suburban stuff, putting the kids in it, going to the shops, getting it into multi-story car parks, that sort of thing. Tim, how have you found it for that sort of daily drive, family duty?
Yeah, I find it quite good actually. As I said, I've come from smaller cars previously, so to me this one feels quite big. But I know there are much bigger cars out there. But yeah, getting around town, I've got 33 tyres and a 2-inch lift roof plate. Mine still comes in just under 2 meters, so I can kind of get into all the car parks I want to. I have installed an iDrive onto it as well, just get rid of that throttle lag to make it a little bit more responsive and nice to drive around town as well. But yeah, as a day-to-day driver, as compared to my mates in other four-wheel drives, it's quite nice to drive.
Okay, that's good. Michael, what do you want to add to that?
Nothing.
Okay, great. Jeff?
Turning circle. The turning circle on it was actually a decent selling point on it. It has
it's good.
One of the best turning circles in the market for being a full-time four-wheel drive, or all drive, when it's running, because that center diff doesn't lock up. It's got a really good turning circle.
Yeah. Okay, good. Now, let's talk about AdBlue, because this is one of the first vehicles, mainstream four-wheel drive vehicles, that came out with AdBlue. By the way, an iDrive controller, for those wondering, is a controller you add in which allows you to sharpen up or soften the throttle response as required. So, yeah, how are you guys finding AdBlue? Let's start with you, Michael.
No problem now. It's showing up in more places. You generally have to go to the big service centers that service big trucks, big rigs as well. The problem is you have to have a special magnetic collar to get it to flow. Otherwise, it wouldn't flow. And a lot of the petrol stations didn't have it because the trucks had it built in. So I went out and spent the $75 to buy one of these collars. But now it seems like it's commonplace.
Okay. Jeff, you want to add anything on the subject of AdBlue?
Again, how often you fill it up depends on how you drive it. Mm-hmm. I would do a lot of off-roading, a lot of low range, that sort of thing. So I was probably filling it up every 5,000 to 7,000 kilometres. Mm-hmm. They say from the sales you should only be filled up probably every service, for 15, whatever it is. I was probably doing 2 fill-ups for those standard service and that sort of thing. Yeah. But yeah, other people I've seen have not touched it for 20,000 kilometres.
Yeah, okay. And Tim, what has your experience of AdBlue been?
Oh, it's a non-event. I just fill it up if the petrol station where I see it. So it's probably every 6 months I probably fill it up or something. And I don't even know. It's the 15-litre tank, I think, isn't it, guys? And I wouldn't have got near that.
Yeah, I think it's about 15 litres, 15 or 20 litres, something like that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the thing that it was probably in people's back of their minds when they go out bush because of the no start option. I've hit the no start option on it. I've had a fault in the system, and it went to no start. It actually let me restart it. I wanted to see what it would do in case it ever did it. So, and there are fixes for it. If you do get a no start situation, you can trick the system to let it start and get you going again.
Yeah. So if the vehicle runs out of AdBlue, it won't start. And by the way, that's not Ford doing that. That's actually a
Euro
mandated requirement. The reason is because AdBlue is required for it to meet its fuel efficiency, and anything which any car needs to pass fuel efficiency regulations must be enabled by default, and that is why stop-start cannot be defaulted off, because if the car's passed fuel consumption testing with it, then it's got to be on. Well, it's got to be on by default. So AdBlue's here to stay until we move into the pure electric world. Okay, so another question from Neil Bridson. What is the recommended lift for touring and some off-road with what size tyres? So really that kind of depends on what sort of touring, what sort of off-roading you want to do. Jeff does a lot of extreme off-roading, so I'm going to pass him for a minute. But like for any four-wheel drive really, with the Everest, you just need to go slightly taller tyres, a 2-inch lift, and then you're away. It doesn't need 35-inch tyres or something like that if you're just going to go four-wheel drive touring. So, Michael, tell us what you've done to improve the off-road capability of your vehicle.
Well, firstly, I'll start by I did extensive traveling through the high country with only a single size increase in tires with all stock everything, and had very few issues with it. Because there was no lift kits, I was one of the first people to buy an Everest. But I have since put on a 2-inch suspension lift through ARB. I've got now just over 33-inch tires. I've got the front and rear lockers, the underbody bodywork, winch, front bar. I think that's most of it.
Yeah. So what you've done? What size are your tires?
I'm just over 33 inches.
Okay. So you've gone up about 2 inches diameter then.
Yeah, I've gone up a little over the 2 inches.
And you've got a suspension lift and you've got a front locker, and then you're pretty much unstoppable.
Yeah, and we've got people that are putting 35s on with a 2-inch lift and only having rub just in real extreme situations.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't recommend anyone put 35s on them unless you specifically want to do that, because the drivetrain and everything isn't designed for it. And frankly, you don't need them if you're just going to go forward drive. If you're really going to hit the hard stuff, then yes, there's an argument. But speaking of dirt and hard stuff, Jeff's got a great channel, Do It in the Dirt. If you want to see Everest doing a lot of extreme off-roading, that's the place to go look at it. So Jeff, talk to us about what modifications you made to your Everest to do all of that work.
So I purposely went out to only make changes as I needed them. So on day one or day two of owning the car, I was out in the bush doing some tracks. Then I got that, and I got hung up on some bits and pieces. So a week later, I went and grabbed larger tyres.
How much larger?
Yeah, I was on titanium, had 20-inch rims, so I went up to the 205 50 series, which I think is just over a 32-inch tyre from that side of things. And that kept me going, again, probably for another 3 or 4 months, until I then put some sliders on it, because I took out the steps. And again, that kept me going for another month or two, as I just do more and more harder stuff. Then I went with a lift, which is about a 2-inch Dobson lift from that side of things. Again, that sort of kept me going. Changed the tyres closer to a 33-inch tyre on a 17-inch rim, that side of things, and a proper mud terrain. And then moved into front diff lock. And again, just because I've just progressed through doing harder and harder bits and pieces. And that diff lock was probably the most controversial addition I made to my modifications on the car. It probably caused the most damage to the car, to the drive line, from that side of things.
Yeah, there's a reason it isn't standard. So if you do fit a front diff lock, it will make the car a lot more capable, but there's a lot of extra stress going through that drivetrain there. So I really like what you've done there, Jeff, which is rather than sort of spend 50k straight out, you've sort of enjoyed your four-wheel driving, because I think for most of us it's getting the car over it, and if the car is super capable, you just point and then just, you know, almost watch as the car does itself. What's the fun in that? So I really like the way you've kind of built it up there. And yeah, it really just goes to show that with cars like the Everest, you know, 2-inch lift, maybe tyres 50 mil taller, and then you can go lots of places. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to towing now, because we do have another question. What Ks do you get when towing a camper? So Tim, this is your chance to shine, because you are Mr. Towing. Talk to us about the Everest and towing, what sort of towing you've done, your previous experience, and any tips you've got for Everest towing owners.
Yeah, well, I tow a new age 19-foot semi-off-road caravan. So it comes in, I think, 2.6 ton and 2.9 ATM. So it's kind of right up on the limit of what the Everest. Yeah, last year I towed my caravan halfway around Australia when I left from Victoria up to Darwin, across Broome and Bay Coast home. And the car did beautifully. I had no overheating issues, no problems. The only thing I did to probably help the car tow it is I put some airbags in the rear suspension just to stiffen the suspension up a bit while towing.
Yep.
But I find it tows really well. Like, we had a short time frame, so I gentle on the car either, so I sat in 100 k's an hour, even towing in hot weather and things like that, and it did it fine.
Yeah. Okay, what have you towed before? How do you compare the Everest with other vehicles you've towed with?
I had a Santa Fe previously, a turbo diesel, and that actually towed really well, but that only had a 2-ton limit. And before that, I had a jet with the Nissan X-Trail, and that didn't tow it very well at all. But yeah, this is I got this caravan when I got this car as well, so I haven't tried towing this van with something else, but yeah, it pulls it fine up the hills, and yeah, does very well. Just I'd also recommend, you know, always towing in sports mode.
Yeah. Okay, Michael, what's your experience been of Everest towing?
Actually, I've been very impressed as well. So I've had a lot of camper trailers. This is one of them in my wallpaper there. That one's about 1.5 ton. I'm probably about 1.8 when I'm fully loaded. And I've towed behind my Jeeps. I've had multiple tow vehicles in the States. And it's for this class of vehicle, I feel it tows very well also. And I've also not had any of the overheating issues. And I've towed that camper trailer all throughout the high country, up really steep tracks for long ways. And I have never had any limp home mode issues or anything like that. So I've had a very good experience with mine. And
on the front of your car, I can see there you've got a bull bar, driving lights, winch. So if anything, your phone is restricted. Yeah. Okay. That is good to hear. Now, with the latest Everest, I think it's gone from 3 to 3.1 tons towing capacity.
Yeah.
Just
for the 2-liter engine.
Yeah, with the 2-liter engine there. Okay, that's good. Now the next question then: what type of front diff lock are you guys using, Michael? What have you got?
It's I think they call it an Eaton electric locker.
And what's yours, Jeff? Same one?
Same one. Yeah.
Same one. Okay, that's fine.
I don't know that there's anybody else that makes them for the Everest yet.
No, I don't think there is. So a question from Facebook then is: how do you find a lack of cargo space for car-based touring, which presumably there is a lack of cargo space? What's your views on that, Michael? Lack of cargo space?
Well, I mean, it was a massive step up from my Jeep Wrangler, but it was a massive step down from my Land Rover Defender. So there's definitely a lack of space. I mean, I've got a drawer system in the back with the fridge, and that eats up most of the storage. So I end up throwing a lot of things on top.
Okay, Jeff, comments about storage space?
Yeah, so my outlook was, if I'm going camping, I'm taking my camper trailer, so I don't want anything in the car. The car was to be kept as light as possible. So I have no drawers, I have no bits and pieces or anything like that. All I've got is recovery gear in the car. If I'm doing a weekend with my son, I'll load it up a little bit more, but I'll have some camper gear, and there's only 2 of us. So I have no issues from that side of things.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. So I've heard a lot of good things about the Everest so far, but there's got to be a downside. So Tim, what are the top 2 or 3 things you dislike most about the Everest?
I'd have to say the handbrake would have to be the
Okay.
number one.
Right.
You go through water or mud, and your handbrake doesn't really work even more after that until you get it adjusted and cleaned out.
Okay, I understand that's something of a common problem if I read your forms correctly.
Yes. For anybody who goes off-roading with it and gets them wet, it happens. It's a joke now.
Okay. All right. So that's one thing you don't like, the handbrake. What else do you not like about the car?
Myself?
Well, no, about the car, not about you. I presume you like yourself.
Yeah.
Right? You know, self-respect and all that. Yeah.
No, well, as I said, the first four-wheel drive I've owned, so it's all a little bit more new to me. So I've been pretty happy with all of it, but I'd probably say the lack of boot space when you're going touring as well, because I have a caravan, but then I also like to just go forward driving for a weekend as well. So when it's my son and myself, I have heaps of room, but if I start taking my daughter, we can do it, but it gets a bit more cramped.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Jeff, what do you like least about the Everest? I've noticed you've, what's that? Pulling a CV apart there?
So that's one of the many CVs back to replace. But again, that is a direct impact of installing a front locker. I drove it for 30,000 Ks without a front locker doing stupid stuff and never broke a CV. I broke a CV as soon as I put a front locker in on the very first trip with it. I have adjusted some driving styles with it now, and I haven't broken one for a while now. I did a very hard weekend at Crofts and didn't break a single one. So yeah, just something to be aware of. But dislikes, probably, and it's a plus and a minus, all the netties that the car has. So the biggest adjustment I had to do was changing my driving style off-road with left foot braking. You can't do that in the Everest. It'll complain, it'll think it's on hill start, hill assist and so forth, and everything will go off, the brakes will lock on hard, and you have to restart the car. So there's many a time I've been in a situation on a steep hill, on a horrible position, where I've had to restart the car because the system has decided that it didn't want me to do what I was trying to do, which would, in a serious off-roader, it would let me do from that side of things. And obviously the handbrake. And Ford service can be interesting if you do use your car off-road. Yeah.
Okay, it's really refreshing that you're able to figure out that that your front locker was actually the cause of that. I mean, it's pretty obvious, but a lot of guys would be saying, Ford should have built it just so it can handle a front locker. Well, they didn't. So if you put one in there aftermarket, then great. But, consequences can come of that. So really refreshing.
Yeah. And of that, the front drive shafts on an Everest are smaller than the drive shafts on a Ranger.
Oh, really?
So one of the things I've done is upgrade to the Ranger front drive shafts. It didn't help a lot, but it does make a difference.
Okay, well, that's a good tip there as well. Okay, so Michael, what do you not like about the Everest, your top hated things?
Well, I think my first top hated thing that I learned when I was wheeling the high country without any lift was the fuel tank bash plate is ridiculous. If you touch anything with it, it's made of a very brittle plastic. And when I brought it into them and I was able to break it with just my hands, saying, "What is this called?" And they said, "It's a bash plate." And I said, "Well, it doesn't take any bashing." And they wanted to charge me, I think, $800 to put on a new bash plate. And fortunately, there's a few manufacturers now who make proper metal plates. So it was ridiculous. The other thing that concerned me, although I don't think it's been as big of a concern that I thought it was going to be, was the fact that the AdBlue tank is right at the very back of the car, right by the left rear tire, and it's just asking to touch stuff. And so I actually had an engineer build me a bash plate for it. That was an area that I was worried about, and I'm only aware of one person that's actually punctured that AdBlue tank. It is a double tank. Of course, it was Jeff. And just to make a comment, no one else I know that's had a front locker has broke a CV. Jeff has a particular set of skills with that right foot.
I mean, I think the difference with Jeff is he deliberately goes looking for the harder tracks, whereas I know some other people just have the front locker there as kind of an insurance. So I think that might be the difference there. So, yeah, okay. That's really good to hear. So let's now talk about let's say that your Everest was sadly written off and you got the insurance money out. Would you go and buy another one, or would you choose from another vehicle on the market? I'll aim that at you first, Tim.
I'd probably go a Ranger just for bigger boot space and the ability to upgrade the GVM and GCM just for towing. My weight's I bought the car and it was perfectly legal, my car with my caravan, but then I've added a lot to my car. So I'm probably not that legal anymore. So yeah, I'd probably ideally think a Ranger would suit me a bit better now.
Well, you may not need to do the upgrade because, as I like to point out to people, there is a upgraded version of the Everest. It's called the Ranger, which does have greater payload. Yeah. So maybe you wouldn't need to, but yes, there's definitely GVM upgrades available for the Ranger and none for the Everest I'm aware of. Okay, so Jeff, if your Everest was, if you just got it slightly wrong and rolled down a mountain and that was, you couldn't do a trackside repair, the insurance company paid you out, what would you buy another one or would you buy something else on the market?
So that's a tough one. For its original use case, I would probably buy the same, better the devil I know. And I don't think there's still anything out there that beats it. Still that price range. I got to admit, I've grown past what I want to use the Everest for. So like I said, I do have a brand new Jeep JL Wrangler I've owned for 4 months. And for off-road stuff, it craps all over what the Everest could do. But for touring and stuff like that, it's probably borderline. But the Everest still makes a great family car with all the kids loaded up with plenty of room for that side of things. And again, that 7-seater aspect.
Okay. And Michael, if yours was written off, would you buy another one with the insurance money or would you buy something different?
Well, if it's only with what's available today, it would be a toss-up between another Everest or a Ranger Raptor. Although if I wait a few years, I want the Ineos Grenadier when that's released.
Okay. All right, that's good to hear. All right, now let's talk about the Ford service experience then, because it's always good to get feedback on what it's like to deal with the average Ford dealer. So in your experience and from what you've seen talking to other owners, because you're all active enthusiast owners, what's your experience with the Ford ownership experience versus others? And we'll start with you, Tim, on that one.
Yeah, I'd say the first dealer I used, I'll go back there anymore because they were just difficult and argumentative kind of all the way along. So I've changed now to Kofi Ford in Dandenong, and they've been very good and quite helpful with everything I've had now.
Okay.
But,
Jeff, what's your Ford dealer and Ford experience ownership been like?
Again, hit and miss. It just depends how difficult the situation be. I've had some great experiences. I broke a rear axle very early in the Everest's life. That all got replaced under warranty, no questions asked, and so forth, and blah blah blah. I had a situation where due to a failed handbrake and then a cable coming off the transmission selector, the car rolled and caused some damage, and that caused me a lot of grief and pain through the whole process with Ford. And then I've had I've changed dealers and I had some great experience with dealers. And then I've had some bad, I'm waiting on the dreaded door rust issue. I've been waiting a number of months to get my doors replaced on that side of things. And that's a combination of COVID, Melbourne, office, a whole heap of stuff for that, but it's not a great experience.
Oh, good. And Michael, how has the Ford ownership experience been for you relative to others? I mean, obviously you're coming out from a Jeep, but...
Mine's been amazing. My deal has been really good. Even though my vehicle is incredibly modified, they haven't asked me any questions about it when I've had any small warranty work that's needed to be done. So I've had a wonderful experience, and like the boys have said, it just really depends on the dealer you have. A lot of dealers are just incredible, and Ford Australia, if the dealer's good, Ford Australia seems to back up whatever the dealer says. But if the dealer's crap, then it's all goes pear-shaped.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good advice there. Now let's talk about common problems, because you're all experienced Everest owners, you're in Everest clubs. So, Jeff, from your perspective, what are some of the common problems which people tend to talk about with Everest? You mentioned door rust just now. You mentioned a handbrake. Anything else?
The AdBlue system. So it's got a horrible habit of throwing up wonderful error messages and going into no restart modes and so forth like that. And my experience with that has really just been driving through water gets into sensors, and then I'll start triggering errors, and then all I've got to do is let it wait and it'll dry out and it'll be good again. So again, just one of those things where understanding what the system is doesn't mean you have to panic because a message throws up with an error about a system. It's just understanding why it's throwing out that error and what it could be from that part of it. So that's probably the main one that's given me a little bit of stress on being out and about in the middle of nowhere and getting AdBlue errors. And again, it's just a matter of understanding why I'm getting those errors and having the ability to bypass it if I needed to from a worst case point of view from that sort of things. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So AdBlue, handbrake, rust indoors. Anything else?
Yeah, the fuel tank guard is one that people frequently comment. They crack those quite regularly.
Yeah, but I'll counter that and say I haven't had a fuel tank guard for 2.5 years now on it, and I regularly use my fuel tank as a bash plate. I haven't punctured it. I haven't gone through it. I haven't done anything. They are strong. Don't worry about it.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, Tim, anything to add on to common problems?
Oh no, I'm about to have to get my second seat base replaced because it keeps squeaking. I've had a few air conditioning actuator motors, I think they're called, had to be replaced under warranty. And yeah, I've also just noticed I've got couple of rusty doors as well. So yeah, that's about it for me.
All right, so we've talked a bit about problems here, but I wouldn't let that put off anyone who's buying one, because all vehicles have problems of these natures, and from what I've seen, the Everest seems to be certainly reliable, and there's no significant problem. It's not like these problems happen to everybody all the time. It's just that when you've got that many owners, the common themes tend to emerge. And then, of course, because there's common owners, common themes tending to emerge, there tends to be fixes and they tend to be known about it. So, yeah, don't be put off by talking about the issues there. Okay, now coming up towards the end of the webinar, so if anyone's got any questions, now is the time to ask them, and we'll go through them. But I'm going to put one for you guys now. So if the chief engineer of Ford was able to come on this program, and for some reason chief engineers are reticent to do so, I can't imagine why, but if they were, and he said to you, or she said to you, I am going to build the next generation Everest, tell me what you want in it. Well, what would you say, Tim?
Yeah, I know. I'd like a bigger motor just because it'd be fun. Not that the 3.2 litres been anything problem. Yeah, options for more like a factory front locker and things like that as well. So you can get stuff covered under factory warranty. Yeah, I haven't thought too much what to ask for there.
Okay, so Jeff, what would you say to the chief engineer if you said, Jeff, I want to take your input and build the Everest Mark II. Tell me what you want.
The Raptor handbrake, that'll be the starter. So a true handbrake on the calipers, that part of it. An option to lock the centre diff. True lock the centre diff.
Yeah.
That can solve. And again, this is just from, I shouldn't talk this up too much, but just from extreme situations that I put the car in, it just gives it a little bit more stability, a little bit more control from that part of it.
So I was waiting for someone to mention that. I've put a video up on my YouTube channel explaining why the Everest unlocking its centre diff or centre clutch at rest is actually a problem, and that really does need to be fixed. So yeah, sorry Jeff, carry on.
Yeah, no, that's right. What was I going to say? Transmission cooler. Again, I don't. It's less for me about time, more about me for off-road. The automatic lets you really crawl stuff, and which I have seen very high 130 degree plus transmission temperatures.
Wow.
They haven't thrown a fault code or anything like that. But again, they expect this transmission to last to 180,000 kilometres before they service it. So mine definitely won't last that, and it needs to be replaced very soon for the fluid in it, from that part of it. And maybe again in a serious off-road situation, let me left foot brake.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, good. All right, so Michael, what would you say to the chief engineer of Ford if he was going to say, I'll take your input on board for the next car?
Well, I would definitely agree with Jeff as far as a tow package, offering a tow package where you can get that extra cooling, maybe even a gear change option. But I also would take what the Wrangler Rubicons have, and that's a button to disconnect the front sway bars. Jeff and I have been talking about trying to figure out a way to do it because you can't do it at the ends the way that they've tucked it underneath. So a front sway bar disconnect, and again, a rear and front locker option like is on a Rubicon.
Yeah, I'm surprised no one's asked for better traction control, because Ford's is definitely
lockers, better traction control always.
I didn't find too many problems with the traction control. It was more just an understanding of how it worked. It wasn't 100% consistent every single time, but it did get you places.
Oh yeah, it's better than nothing. Okay, well that's good to hear. Now a couple of final questions to complete. So when is the next Everest due? The answer is we don't know. There's a new Ranger due next year, and you would presume that the Everest, being based on the same platform, would follow that, but we frankly don't know. Follow me on Facebook and on MotoFomo, and you'll hear it first. Next question is, would you consider an Everest hybrid? Well, the answer to that is there going to be one? The answer is that there will definitely be one at some point, because every single car manufacturer is having to go electrified, because otherwise you're just not going to be able to meet regulations. So the question is, either the Everest is going to go electric in some way, or it's going to stop being produced. That's basically the two choices there. Let's go around quickly with that. Jeff, how do you feel about a hybrid electric Everest?
I'm a tech guy, so more tech is awesome. The ability to run just off the electric motor in times for really good torque control and stuff like that would be a great addition. So yeah, I'd be for it.
Okay, Michael?
Yes, same with me. I was actually quite liking what the Wranglers come out with. The next year they're going to come out with the hybrid version, and the way they've set that up, if they could do something similar in the Everest, I would definitely convert.
Yeah, and Tim?
Yeah, I'd look into it, depending on how much weights and things how much payload it leaves you as well.
Okay, there we go. All right, so there's no more questions then. So that brings us to the end of the webinar. Guys, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to talk to me and help out all these potential Everest owners and users with the benefit of your experience. This will be up on my YouTube channel shortly, so you can read it then. And the next webinar is next Monday. That is going to be an exciting topic, women in four-wheel drive. And there'll be some more webinars after that as soon as I can find some more people to come on here. Thanks again, guys, and see you on the tracks.
Yeah. No problems. Thank you.